Hello, my name is Teddy McLean, and this is my American family. On my family tree, I'm down here on the bottom, with my dad's side up here on the left, my mom's side up on the right. My family has originated from Europe, especially the United Kingdom and some areas of Eastern and Western Europe. They have immigrated to the United States throughout various stories and countless events. Most of the family resides in the north and eastern area of the country now. Starting on my father's side, Luis Catero and Cano Langoni came over to America from Cento, Italy in the 1860s before Ellis Island. Around the same time, John Lamborghini and Clementina Stefani from Cento, Italy came to America. Luis and Cano had a daughter, Rose Langoni from Springfield, Mass., who met and married John and Clementina's son, Frank Lamborghini, from Plymouth, Mass. Rose Langoni and Frank Lamborghini's daughter, Anne Lamborghini, is my grandmother. Anne Lamborghini was born on February 5, 1938, in Springfield, Mass. She is the only child in her family that spent lots of time growing up with her cousins. Childhood memories for Anne include playing hopscotch, rollerblading, jumping rope, playing cards with her father Frank, and going to the beach during summer vacation on Connecticut shore with her friends and cousins. She was also a neighborhood babysitter and loved going to houses where they still had television sets. For a brief period of her childhood, Anne lived in her grandmother's house with her aunt and cousin Joe, which she enjoyed after being used to being the only child in the house. Her father Frank worked a lot as a baker, and her mother Rose worked often as a housemaid and a cleaner. Despite working leisure activities, Anne and her parents went to church every Sunday with the Roman Catholic faith always being strong in the family. Anne went to a Catholic high school, which she adored and would never want to miss in high school, and worked at a department store with her friends. She went on to get a degree in education at Westfield State College, now University of Massachusetts. Anne met her husband, Eugene McLean II, 5 years after college at a New Year's Eve party. A couple years later, they met again at a wedding and started to date in 1963 and were married in 1964. Eugene McLean II's family story starts in Scotland. Originally from Nova Scotia, Alexander McLean and Flo MacDonald came over to America after they got married. Their son, Eugene McLean I, from Medford, Mass., met and married Clara Smith from Hoover, Mass. Eugene I and Clara Smith had 5 children: Donald, Eugene II, Albert, Marcia, and Mabel. Eugene McLean II is my grandfather. Eugene McLean II was born on July 28, 1932, in Springfield, Mass. He worked on farms as a teenager and then in a lawnmower store that his father started in 1947 and continued through the family even when my father worked at it. After serving in the Korean War and being stationed in Germany, Anne and Eugene met when Eugene was in his early 30s. After their wedding, Anne and Eugene lived in an apartment in West Springfield, then moved to a house in Agawam, Massachusetts, where they raised their children. They lived in the house from 1965 until 2013, before currently retiring in Cape Cod. While in their house in Agawam, Eugene II worked the lawnmower/landscaping business, and Anne was a substitute teacher while raising the kids. They had 3 children. Eugene III, born on August 26, 1965. Joseph, born on July 21st, 1969. Joseph, born on July 21st, 1969. And Matthew, born on October 20th, 1972. Growing up, the boys spent most of their vacations boating and fishing in Maine and going to Hampton Beach with their whole family. In 1977, Anne and Eugene started to spend the winters in Mark Island, Florida, and in 1987 they got a house on Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Both vacation spots are used by my grandparents to this day, and I am fortunate enough to have spent them growing up in my childhood as well. In 1987, Anne and Eugene's second son, Joseph McLean, attended St. Michael's College in Colchester, Vermont, where he will meet his wife and my mother, Arlene James. Arlene James's story starts in Lithuania on her mother's side. Her mother's grandmother, Anna Krukas, was an immigrant from Lithuania. She was just 2 years old when she came here and went to New York City. Her and her parents were fleeing the Russian Tsar while in Lithuania. Anna grew up in foster care, but was still with her siblings, Peter, Paul, George, Charles, and Caroline. When they were very young, her siblings, Peter, Paul, and Caroline, died from a poisoning accident while they were in foster care. It was a tragic story and very too bad. George Ferguson and Mary Guilfoyle at the time came from Ireland, and they had a son, John Ferguson, who grew up in Quincy, Mass. John and Anna got married and had 4 kids: John, Martha, Dorothy, George. They raised their children in Weymouth, Mass, and Dorothy Ferguson is my Grammy Dot. Dorothy Ferguson was born on February 22nd, 1936, and grew up in Weymouth, Mass. When she was in first grade, Dorothy's older brother George passed away on January 27th, 1942, the day after his birthday, from an infection in his kidneys. George was 8 years old, and before he died, he gave his toys and other belongings to his siblings. Dorothy coped with George's loss through her Roman Catholic faith and belief in heaven, and that her brother George was up there with all the angels. Dorothy would go and see him at the cemetery every day. As Dorothy grew up, she went on to become a secretary in Boston after high school, and only making $44 a week, she was able to cover many expenses and buy clothes for her younger sister Martha. When she was 17, Dorothy's father, John Ferguson, bought her a car. While out in the car one day, Dorothy got in a small accident. She stopped at a gas station after the accident, where Donald James offered to give her a ride home. After seeing the report of the accident in the newspaper, Donald James decided to ask Dorothy out, and they got married when Dorothy was 19. Donald James's story comes from Ireland and England. Eva Payne lived in Plymouth, Massachusetts. She married Frank James Sr., who was also Irish and English. Frank James Sr. is a distant relative of Peregrine White, who was actually an Englishman who arrived to America on the Mayflower. When he was young, Frank James Sr. was put in the home for little wanderers as an orphan, but he still took in his mother when he got older. Eva and Frank James had 6 children: Evelyn, Donald, Margie, Francis III, Robert, Barbara. Donald James from Braintree, Mass. is my grandpa. Donald James was born on January 27th, 1934, and he grew up in Braintree, Mass. He went to high school where he played baseball and basketball, and as a child, Donald's grandmother, Frank James's mother, lived with them until she passed away and actually had the funeral in the house. After serving in the National Guard, Donald James went on to work in the trades, where he was a plumber mechanic, and this was actually when he was a mechanic and met Dorothy. Dorothy and Donald's wedding in 1955 was not able to be held in the church because Dorothy was Catholic and Donald was Protestant. Both their parents were very religious. In 1971, Donald decided to convert to Roman Catholicism after Dorothy had a 5-month miscarriage, which would have been their youngest daughter, Faith. Donald wanted to name the daughter Faith, and he said Faith gave him the faith to convert. After getting married, Donald and Dorothy moved around a bit until they finally settled in Hingham, Mass. In 1966, which they still reside in today. They had 6 children: Donald, Donna, Mary Beth, Thomas, Jennifer, and Arlene. While they raised their kids, Donald started his own company, which was in the vacuum and pump industry. He worked in this company his whole life and eventually passed it on to his son Thomas. Dorothy was a stay-at-home mom until the late 70s when she decided to go to Quincy Community College, where she got a degree as a licensed practitioner nurse. She went on to be a visiting nurse, moving from home to home to take care of people. Dorothy is also a Carmelite nun from the Roman Catholic Church. Dorothy and Donald's youngest daughter, Arlene McLean, went to get a degree in education at St. Michael's College, where she met my father, Joseph. My family and my grandparents all seem to reside in Massachusetts. After Arlene and Joe met in college and graduated in 1991, they got married in 1993 and lived in a small house in Agawam, Mass. On May 9th, 1994, they had my older sister, Madeline Faith McLean. Madeline's middle name is Faith after the miscarriage that my Grammy Dot and my Papa Donald had. On March 29th, 1996, I myself, Theodore James McLean, was born. My middle name was after Donald James's last name, as well as my mother's maiden name. A year after I was born, my parents decided to move to our current house in Long Meadow, Massachusetts. And then, on February 11th, 1999, my younger sister and the last McLean sibling, Abigail Rose McLean, was born. Abigail's middle name is after my great-grandmother Rose, on my father's side. While my family and my sisters were growing up and getting older, the rest of my family elsewhere was growing just the same. I had aunts, uncles, and cousins all over, especially on my mother's side, with the 6 siblings. The family grew and grew. We spent every holiday and summer activity together. Over the past 20 years, even longer before I was born. It's an amazing time spending with all my cousins, aunts, and uncles, and I appreciate so much. My godmother, Mary Beth James O'Connor, is one of my mom's sisters. Between my 5 aunts and uncles on my mother's side, I have 14 cousins. On my father's side, with Rose Lamborghini and Claire McLean, we have 4 cousins. 3 of them reside in Florida. Until November of 2015, did we get one more cousin, making it the 5th cousin on my father's side. Eugenie McLean was born from my Uncle Matt and my Aunt Deb. And it's amazing to see with these pictures of my grandparents holding Eugenie that 3 weeks meets 84 years. Eugene, the 2nd McLean, meets Eugenie McLean, named after him and other names in the family. My American family is something that I treasure so much. My parents tell me that's amazing that I still have all 4 grandparents in my life and so many cousins, aunts, and uncles spread out over the world. It's amazing to hear all their stories, how they came from Europe. I can't be more than thankful for them. Thank you.